So Sanjay and I decided to get together and do some videos where we take the same theme and we both think about it, contemplate it, and do a video on it and put it together so that on certain topics you don't just have my opinion or his opinion, but you have both our opinions. And we decided to try and make them a little bit visually interesting by walking and talking so that you get to see a little bit of where we are. And, I'm here in Australia and he's somewhere else. We thought we might start examining some of the beliefs that we have basically unquestioningly held from our time in Rigpa and ask ourselves whether they're really true or not. So I'm going to do this while I'm walking and enjoy the trip. The question we are looking at first is this true or not? Now the statement is, a good spiritual friend attacks your hidden faults. Now, as Rigpa students, we heard that a lot. So the question I'm going to contemplate as I walk and talk is that question. Is a good spiritual friend someone who attacks your hidden faults? I think there is some truth to that, as there is truth to a lot of things that we were taught in Rigpa. And that it's not so much that the problem is that it's untrue, but the problem is, I think, in how it was interpreted. So we are blind to our own faults. I think that's absolutely true. And if we're really trying to help somebody, sometimes, it's better to tell them the truth than to sort of say something that is nice for their ego, but mightn't be particularly helpful to someone who really wants to move and develop. But, in a normal situation, a spiritual friend, is someone who loves you. I think if you really care for somebody, you actually want to be gentle about pointing out their hidden faults. I remember a friend, a Rigpa friend actually, and I worked with her quite closely together, and every now and then we would sort of lock horns. I said, well, if you see me, getting a bit pushy, getting a bit speedy, going way too fast for you, just tell me. And she agreed. And whenever that I got, speedy and pushy, she'd just say, hey, you're doing it. No, slow down. And I'd say, oh, whoops, okay, sorry. And I'd adjust, just like that. It was very simple and, very kind. So I think in that way, it does work, and it can be very helpful for helping you to, actually get rid of your bad habits. So I think that's true, but I think it can be used badly, and I think it's the word attack that's the problem in terms of how it was in Rigpa, because Soggy would say that and then he would attack and, quite violently sometimes, often. And that's the problem, because the problem is that when you attack someone, they become defensive naturally. And so that makes it actually hard for them to hear. So why would you do it in that way? Why would you do it in a way that's actually ineffective? That's the thing. I think the methodology of attacking and crushing, all this violent kind of terminology, I think that's actually the problem. Not the concept itself, and we can be spiritual friends to each other. We don't need to set ourselves up as someone important or someone enlightened to be good spiritual friends who, and I would say, not attack each other's hidden faults, because really nobody wants to be attacked. And as I said, I think it's actually a very ineffective way of doing it. We can be clear, but we can be clear and kind. Clear and kind and firm and really helpful. So I would say a good spiritual friend points out your hidden faults, not attacks them. Attacking, I think, is much more likely to solidify those hidden faults. You can say, oh, well, it throws up your ego, so you can see your ego, so you can then, let it go or whatever. But it just makes it incredibly difficult. And why make it more difficult? It doesn't actually make sense to attack when you can just point out. So I would say that no, a good spiritual friend does not attack your hidden faults. I would say that a good spiritual friend points out your hidden faults. But, only if you're ready for it as well. You need to be sensitive. Because, if you point things out to people when they're not ready for it, they won't hear it anyway. So I think this is the issue. This was said to us many times, a spiritual friend, that my job is to attack your hidden faults. That's my job. And we accepted it. It's just not an effective method, that's all. No, a friend does not attack. A friend could point out, and that could be extremely useful. So, yeah, it's the violent aspect of that is wrong. That's my opinion. I wonder what Sanjay has come to.
Your hidden faults should be pointed out by a qualified Vajra master. And whether that's done in public or not, that tends to be an imprecise way. It's not a very personal, knowing someone's personal hidden faults. It's more like trying to project it onto the entire audience, even if you have one target. Everyone's going to be cultically reinforcing things that they find relevant to them, that are a mirror in the other people. But if it's done personally and it's correct, it doesn't matter if it's a Vajra master, because anyone that points out your hidden faults in a way that helps you would figure that out. And because you figure that out, you would have appreciation. And it might be difficult to figure out and see that they're right if it's a hidden fault that you don't see at first. But if you ask yourself it's true and test it out in your mind, then you're better off. But if you don't agree with what's pointed out, and you spend a long time trying to make yourself understand, but you can't understand because it's not true, and it remains hidden from you, but you accept it to be true, then because you're trying to fix a problem that you don't have, or live up to a kind of judgment that is unfair. So this kind of thing, of hidden faults, it comes back to these three categories of the obvious phenomenon, hidden phenomenon, and very hidden or very subtle phenomenon. And the first, the obvious, is what we can see and agree upon just by looking at with our sense fields, hearing, whatever it is, and agreeing about something. But then, if we want to see the hidden faults or the hidden aspects of phenomena, whether it's our personality or the way we behave, then we're going to have to use inference. We can't just use observation. We have to gather from the observation and other things and put them together and say, oh, okay, so because of that, and that's why logic and reasoning are the sort of tools of inference, having a valid inference. So, someone who says they can point out your hidden faults should have a very, very good capacity to use logic and reasoning and infer things. And they could show you how they inferred it, thus making you understand, as opposed to just alluding to it in a vague way where you might take on that as your fault and then try to correct yourself where it's not even really applicable to you, And of course the third category is like something like karma is subtle, and only Buddhas can see that. And given that no Tibetans would ever normally say they were enlightened without just being made to prove it by the rest of their order, and then probably excommunicated for being a liar of the first degree, well then anyone that says there's a link between, a karmic link between effect and a cause. He's pointing out the very subtle, and unless they can prove that, that's really bad. And I would like to point out that Sokyo does point out that he's sick because of karmic links, because of unconnected actions of other people, because of disobeying him somehow. It leads to a very bizarre, hard to connect with any logic kind of result. So, yeah, that's not good. And so if he's doing that, then I would also have very big doubts about his capacity to point out hidden faults of our personality. And I mean, it doesn't mean he'll be off the mark with every criticism. He's a very perceptive man when it comes to people and how they hold themselves. So he can play the game a lot like a tarot card reader or something. And, you know, he can easily make you think that he has a very high perception, because he does in a certain level. But there are a lot of things that he just doesn't understand, and he can't infer due to lack of education. So you have to take that into account. You know, if he said, "Oh, Sangye, you can't do sound engineering," which he said one time, but I know that I'm a qualified sound engineer who's been given a lot of kudos by not only Rigpa people but professional world. So why did he say that? Just random. I don't know, to try and put me down. And he doesn't really have an understanding. He does understand what he thinks the sound is good. There are many things like that. Or if he said I was a bad computer programmer without actually knowing anything about computers or programming or me, or having an example that I've done to compare, then that would be really a mistake. You can't possibly put any credence to what he's saying. But the thing is, when you're in a situation where everyone is assuming that everything their teacher says has some element of truth, or else their teacher wouldn't say it, there's a lot of risk there, you know? There's a lot of risk. You start really losing your ability to judge and use your critical intelligence to protect yourself from being taken advantage of, or possibly even losing your sanity, because you're constantly talking to yourself, accusing yourself of things that have no proof or applicability. So, okay. Hopefully something of this is useful, and Talia can follow up.
So once again, I hope that somebody found this useful and perhaps an inspiration for your own kind of contemplation. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. See you later.